Hello, dear friends. We're beginning the panel discussion which we're having here with the guests. The panel discussion which has the name of Ukraine in the New World Route to Success. So very short, I will tell you that if we speak about the Ukraine, there are two tendencies which can be totally possible to the close time. Either we overcome the great lagging behind for about 50, 60 or 100 of years, or you know that we'll have the second option, which is rather pessimistic. So how can we overcome this lagging behind? I think there will be a discussion about that today. Our today's guests will speak about the world tendencies, what's going on today, what will go on in 10 to 15 years. They will speak what's the response, the option, the first or the second is more probable. I will get you introduced our speakers. Pavlo Petrenko, Minister of Justice of Ukraine, Mr. Evgeni Utkin, businessman, Chairman of Technology Holding Company KM Core, Mr. Dmytro Bondarenko, CEO of the group of companies LIGA, Mr. Wijkman, co-president of the Club of Rome, Andriy Bulakh, managing partner Deloitte in Ukraine, and finally Mr. Reddington, expert as cyber in the matters of the cyber crimes, founder of Trusted Night and UAH Payments. So we can begin our discussion. I'd like to ask our speakers that first of all, the first presentation is on this topic. We have the timing of 5 minutes. So far, let's not break the timing, and later on we'll speak about the questions and the discussion itself. So let's begin with you, Mr. Petrenko, please. Thank you, Ms. Natalia. Hello, dear friends. Well, really, I have a great honor to be present at this forum, which is a nice tradition to unite on one playground the representatives of the business, the state officials and the civil sector. So the question, which is now the subject of the discussion, as for what's the place of Ukraine in the new changing world, it's really relevant. Because if you don't think about your future, you don't have any future at all. So just to be the country which is beyond the tendencies and the dynamic world, to be the failed state country is totally unbearable. So Ukraine, for 25 years of independence, really lost lots of real opportunities. I'd like to remind that after the split of the Soviet Union, we were the country which had a huge industrial potential, the scientific base. This was the country which was one of the leaders according to those innovative technologies, and about the production of weapons, about the quantity of educated people, a wonderful territory and opportunities of development of the agrarian sector. 25 years without having a precise strategy where we are heading for, we just lost this quarter of a century. So what's going on during the last 3.5 years? After the revolution of dignity, as I'm sure, there was a very serious mobilization, the stress for the country and for the society. So now, when we understood that the world is very harsh, competitive, and the competition of the countries which are neighboring to Ukraine is not only done by diplomacy, but sometimes the weapon is used, we don't have any other chance but to adjust ourselves and to define the future of the country if you will want to preserve this country. So here, to be the country which is the raw material producer or the raw appendix of some other countries, this is the road to nowhere. The world is dynamically changing so much that the forecasts of the futurologists being done 30 years ago and seem to be totally surrealistic are happening. And the forecast for the next 30 years, beginning the colonization of Mars and ending with the questions of the creation of artificial intelligence, they seem to be science fiction, but this is the reality the world faces, and this is the reality which deals each of us. I'm sure that to be competitive is possible if we use the biggest potential we are having. I mean the human potential. And our future is not that we will be an agrarian country or the country which makes some raw achievements. Our future is that we will be a competitive country in the sectors of economy which are beginning to develop. This is the digital economy. We're having all the opportunities for that. We're having both the wonderful logistical location and the wonderful potential as for the professionals. And this is the task of the authorities and the state to help and support for the creation of the new sectors of economy in this sphere. I'm really glad to make you aware that Ukrainian parliament several hours ago adopted one of the incredibly significant, important laws which has become the law already, the law about e-services. This law is maybe not that popular as for the policy about the PR for our deputies, but this is the law which creates an opportunities of the development of the totally new market, the market of digital technologies. This law had a very complicated process of the fight with the lobbyists who were trying to fail it, but still today 240 MPs supported this law, so I do hope that it will be really soon signed by the President. What does it give to Ukraine? Which competitive opportunities does it provide for Ukrainian economy? This is an introduction of totally new progressive technologies in the business, beginning with the trans-border, cross-cultural treaties and the bank ID and mobile ID technologies. 3 years ago, the usage of such technologies in the communication of the state and the business were totally science fiction. For Ukraine, which used to be one of the most bureaucratic and slow countries as for the state services, it was totally science fiction. But now it's reality. This is the reality which comes to our e-governance. This is the reality which gives us an opportunity through the cell phone to get any service from the state. This is the reality which takes away manipulations and opportunities of the everyday corruption and gives an opportunity to the business to create new products which will be competitive in the modern world. Will it give the certain push for the Ukrainian business? I'm sure this task is already done by the Ukrainian companies, because they adjust their companies from the new obsolete standards to the old obsolete standards to the new standards. Mr. Pavlo, I'm sorry. Well, I'm almost over. So is this a stimulus for the state to change? Yes, because the Ukrainian state and Ukrainian state institutions are obliged till 2020 to be transferred into totally different standards of communication and business with the citizens. I'm sure we will take this challenge and we will face it. Thank you. Well, in the discussion I'll mention in more details. Before I give the floor to the next speaker, I've got a very short question for you, so please give a short response. Ukraine has several law problems, legislation problems for the business. This is the tax code, the unreformed court system, e-registers, as you know, there are problems there. And yesterday there were certain amendments to the criminal procedural code. All of that interferes the substantial development of business, which we hope most of all for, and the formation of the middle class. Doesn't it seem to you that the topic of import into Ukraine of the court system of the UK could be interesting, or any other examples which could help us? I think that we are the country which is capable to form our own court system, Ukrainian system. We don't need to import from the colonies, countries. We have such an opportunity. We have experts. We've got all the opportunities for Ukraine to have the independent justice which will defend the right of the property and human rights. As for the main problem of the business, yes, it is the crazy bureaucracy and indifference from the systems of the state bodies. So now we're having the total transformation, both of the system of the Cabinet of Ministers and other state authorities who are coming to this system, and lots of people who are working in the business are coming to this system. I think we will overcome this problem eventually, and this is a perspective of several years for the communications with the business would be totally different. It has already changed, because now we can discuss these questions with the business. And 30 years ago, we hadn't such a chance at all. And now I'm giving the floor to Evgeni Utkin, the businessman, a very famous businessman. I'd like to ask you, Mr. Evgeni, to begin your presentation and your speech with the question: doesn't it seem to you, I just told that the state is weak, we can hope only for business, the civil society is being formed, there are lots of questions to bureaucracy. Doesn't it seem to you that the business today can form new values in the society, and we have to begin with that, not only with the pragmatic things, but with the new values formed, please? Thank you. Well, before I answer your question, I'd like to first of all thank the organizers and the Vasily Khmelnytsky Foundation for such a forum, because we've got lots of grounds which are populist political grounds, and the economic forum, which is being held for several years, seems to form a very professional ground for professional discussions. And if Vasily invited me to Mars for those discussions, I would fly there. But as a person from Kyiv, I can't help saying that I'd like to know the status of these buildings we are now at, because this lack of transparency creates, for me personally, as a resident of Kyiv, it creates certain percent of discomfort. Dear colleagues, we're living in the 21st century. The 21st century, and I would say about three things. First of all, this is the century of cardinal changes. I'm the person who's lived 3 revolutions, perestroika and 2 Maidans, and I want to say, traveling along the world, and it's not only about Ukraine but the whole world, the cardinal changes are going on in the whole world. Secondly, technologies. The technologies have become accessible, understandable, friendly, and the technologies are also changing and influencing this world. And the minister has already mentioned that really the usage of such technologies is making relationship of the business and our state more transparent. And third, the knowledge. The most important thing, not the information, because the information is owned by anyone. Each one can become an expert, especially in Facebook. And the information stopped being exclusive. The next tendency we are seeing now is urbanization. Urbanization, and in this case, maybe later in the discussions I will tell about what I think about Kyiv city. But today, 10 cities of the world, 20% of the whole GDP of the world, and more than the 300 cities is half of the economy of the whole world. The next tendency, we've got people who are millennials. I've got 4 children, and for them this piece of gadget is the most important in their life. People who spend, and sometimes our state officials spending about from 5 to 7 hours a day in this virtual world. It's very important. I will mention about that later on. Then, we're speaking about innovations, and very often the innovations, as much as the very much used word IT guys, those IT guys is a term, a kind of a sign or a symptom. We say that we are proud of our IT guys. Yes, I'm proud of them too, because I have something to do with them, but still, innovations is not technologies only. So I really liked during the discussion in the beginning, the chairman of the Club of Rome said that first of all, the innovations should deal with the economies and social structure of the world. It's true, the world is in the state when 2% of the population has 80% of the riches. We need new, innovative approaches, not into the technologies, but in the structures. And the last thing which I'd like to mention now is that very often I think about our country. For 27 years I'm in business, and for 26 years the country reminds me of a very old, small airplane which is flying for 26 years. We can't find the proper crew, because this crew always deals with something different. So this crop duster, this small agricultural biplane, is still not that good. But still there is good news, that you know about the new technologies, the innovations of Elon Musk. You know that with the drones and automobiles are already in our cars. I can see here a very great, huge perspective for Ukraine, because for me, Maidan is the model, this new model, the most perspective model of the governance of the society, of the state, and of the city, and of the business. When we don't have this crew, when we have a very great self-organization, I believe in our unmanned, driverless Ukraine. I can see a great advantage of our country in that. This weakness is already a great advantage for us. Thank you. Thank you. The next question from Mr. Anders Wijkman. Mr. Anders, you know Ukraine, you know Ukrainian business. How does it seem for you? You have a huge experience of Ukrainian business and businesses all over the world. How does it seem to you? Which challenges Ukraine faces? And what should Ukrainian business do to overcome this great gap, this abyss, which separates us from the world business, from the innovative economy?
I'm afraid you are partly wrong. I don't know that much of Ukraine. I've been here a couple of times, and I'm very happy for the invitation. And I would like to say at the outset that I'm very impressed by the way your country is managing a very difficult situation. I'm coming from Sweden. We have been a peaceful nation, have not been involved in conflicts for more than 200 years. And we can hardly understand what it means to be in a situation where you have occupation in part of your country and this constant tension with Russia. And I think you are managing that quite well, I must say. And I just wish that we, the rest of Europe, could do more to support you than we do. And I can just hope that somehow, by some miracle, this conflict, this tension will subside and you will be able to reach an agreement. Because otherwise it will, of course, be very, very difficult to move forward and make progress. I very much resonate with the comments made by Evgeni Utkin. I see the same kind of changes going on in the world. Technological changes, political, social changes. And some of it is very positive, some of it is not so positive. Technologies have positive sides, but also some risky sides. And I must say that although I fully embrace the digital revolution, and I think Ukraine should do it even more than you do, we also have to realize there are some risks. Who will in the future own our data? Will our data be owned by a few multinational companies that control all the power, indirectly and directly? What about our privacy? That's a huge issue which nobody really wants to deal with. And I don't think Ukraine can deal with it alone, but it can be part of a dialogue. Secondly, employment, labor market. Nobody knows what will happen, but many people will in the future be redundant, and they may lack the skills to pick up the very jobs that will be offered. So the whole question about labor market and how people will fare in that new labor market is an issue. The whole question of governance and fake news, both the Trump election, Brexit, and now more recently the Kenyan election, was manipulated through technology. We know that, and we don't really know how to deal with it. So while I'm very positive about this digital revolution, and the logic there is very different from the industrial society, and I think most politicians have not really understood it, we have to be cautious, we have to take the risk seriously. My friend Graham Exton made a point this morning that capitalism today is not very conducive to real progress and well-being. The so-called trickle-down effect that once we grow the economy, automatically all people will be lifted up is not really true. We have seen over the last 30, 40 years a colossal polarization when it comes to wealth and income. And I need not quote the statistics. And unfortunately, and I deal a lot with climate change, and I'm chairman of a big innovation program at the European level in Club at KIEF. We look for low carbon technology solutions. The problem is that GDP growth, as we know it, the higher it is, the more purchasing power, the higher CO2 emissions. So we really have to be very careful when we plan the economy. And we have to reform the economic system so that it addresses the social and the ecological issues as well. We live today in a full world. When we started to develop our economies, the world was more or less empty. When I was a boy, we were less than 3 billion people in the world. We are now approaching 8. And if everybody is going to have the living standard that we have in Sweden or in the United States, we would need several planets. And we don't have several planets. And that's why I'm so happy that the organizers have translated one of my most recent books about the circular economy, where I tried to show that by using not only energy but also materials in a more clever way, you can have win-win-win solutions for society. But because the fact is, the present system, it throws away a lot of money all the time. We take resources, we turn them into products, we use them for a short period of time. We don't really recycle materials well. We don't reuse components. We throw away money or we incinerate it. So here we can do a lot to become more efficient, to save money, and to save or reduce pollution. So I think Ukraine, if I had to give advice, I would say embrace the digital economy, embrace the clean technology revolution, look into the circular economy. It offers a lot of opportunities. And be careful with free trade. I agree, trade is very important, but no country in the world so far has succeeded in a totally free trade system. You need protection in the beginning to build up your infrastructure, your industries. And the way some of us in Western Europe and the US in particular have dominated the global economy in the last 20 years, it has made us richer, but not necessarily the rest of the people. Thank you.
Thank you.
And now I'd like to ask Mr. Bulakh with such a question. The world is dynamically changing so quickly, both in the business and in the values and in communications and so on. The state, if we speak today in Ukraine, how it was already mentioned, doesn't catch up those changes. Besides that, there is the whole queue of questions which are beyond the state, the ecology and lots of other problems. What do you think? Will Ukraine be able to adjust itself very soon to those requirements for the business? What can the business do for that? Thank you, Natalia, for this question. Hello, everyone. Before answering the question as for Ukraine, I would come back to the situation about this new world. And my colleagues told already about the certain trends which are going on now, so I'd like to mention about several of them, which I personally, as a living being, I'm personally a bit scared about them. The first trend is with the technologies which we're speaking about, which actively, dynamically change the world. But in this aspect, I'm interested in the role of a human being and the changing role both in business and role of a human who becomes much more in this virtual world Evgeni is mentioning about. Automatization, robotization leads to the role of a person to be overseen, and the time of the people becomes free, spare. According to different forecasts and analysis, the unmanned cars can lead to the situations when hundreds of millions of people will have free time more. Why do I care about such a tendency? Because Natalie has mentioned this topic, the crisis of the values, which as it seems to me, is going on in the world. We can see radicalization, we can see the situation when the elections which are going on in the countries with democratic values surprise us. We can see radicalization, and my persuasion is that it's connected to the crisis of the values, the combination, the mix of the two components, making people free from the employment places, and they are replaced by technologies, and now we have the crisis of values too. It can lead to a very high-scale problems if we don't solve them some other way. We can look at the past. Religion could somehow keep those things, but now we see that religion is radicalized too. My opinion is that looking at Ukraine, we need to understand these tendencies. My opinion is that these problems can be solved only by the new way of thinking. When we speak about Ukraine, the state we are living at now is the state of the 70, 80, 90 years ago sample. Our attempts to change this state and to make something like the state which is more developed, European or American, my opinion is that it won't help our country. We need to construct the state of the 21st century, and to construct such a state we need to look at the new tendencies in the governance. Evgeni has meant the concepts, and it seems to me it's like the holocracy. When we have the really great distribution of authorities, and the idea that someone in the state knows how the country should live better, it's utopia. The design of thinking, experiments, this is what can help us on the level of the state. It seems to me that Ukraine is in a very profitable state because we have very low starting positions. To experiment in Canada or in Sweden or in European countries, we need to have lots of courage and risk. In my opinion, our people in the government, they shouldn't be afraid of experiments. One more fail wouldn't lead to any of the cardinal consequences, but the success of the implementation of new technologies, for instance, the idea of UK law. Yes, okay, we can say that we need to develop our own system of justice. But this history shows the totally different. Not either the first Maidan, the second one. Wasn't it understandable that rule of law is the key problem? Since the first Maidan, we didn't solve it, we are trying to solve it. But it seems to me we were trying to do it the same way we did it yesterday. The experiments? Why not? UK law works? Yes, it does. Do we have the trust for it? Yes, we do. Do we have the trust to our system? No, we don't. So we're taking some other small regional sphere and try to experiment, not theorize, but try to experiment. My opinion is that only in this way, with a totally different approach towards the way of thinking, we can solve both the problems on the level of Ukraine and those challenges we are facing on the global level. Thank you, Andriy. So going on with the topic our speakers began, I'd like to ask Mr. Reddington. You are a well-famous specialist in cryptocurrencies questions, so I'd like to ask you, there is a great discussion in this trend, this direction, whether we need it or not, what is Bitcoin, and whether it will become some foundation for us in the future, or maybe this is vice versa, a bubble which won't exist for long. And one more problem, which sounds to be science fiction, but still it's very close, it seems to me, like Elon Musk said, it's close about the danger of artificial intelligence. If you remember, 5 years ago, the great scientist Tatiana Chernigovskaya said that the problem of artificial intelligence doesn't exist while artificial intelligence understands itself, and this time is close. It's interesting. What do you think about that?
Start with answering the question about Bitcoin and blockchain technology. Ukraine stands at a crossroads between repairing its economy and repairing itself as a country. And I believe strongly that blockchain
Что-то надо включить, мне кажется, помочь включить этот самый микрофончик.
Okay. I believe that blockchain technology is the future of Ukraine. I believe that, not necessarily adopting Bitcoin as a payment. I think it's clear that because there's no central issuer, Bitcoin can't be recognized as an official payment system, but using blockchain technology here in Ukraine and having it issued centrally by the government, you have a path forward where not only can this technology be used to centralize services. So to answer the first question, what's possible with blockchain technology? By embracing blockchain technology, the entire system is real time. This technology can help the government streamline government services, financial services, and audits. And I'm so happy to hear the developments that happened today. I'm delighted. So I mean, the government does see, or at least agrees with what I'm suggesting. The biggest benefit the government can have is, and people of Ukraine can have by implementing a system like this, is bringing back trust in banking. Right now, I've lived here for 3 months now, and Ukrainians are the most innovative and intelligent people I've ever seen, and they're also the most hardworking. It's been an absolute honor to live here for 3 months and meet so many interesting people, and it's very important that it has to start with the government at the government level. But I see when I look at the future of Ukraine, it's bright. It's very bright. So it's funny because this is part of my presentation. So innovation and government regulation is where this starts. Ukraine has a chance to become the Silicon Valley of crypto innovation. But it has to be done with the regulation of ICOs and exchanges. If the government adopts a system like this, we can provide an innovation platform to the entire world. And the type of innovation I'll show in a second, but it happens through ICOs. ICOs are initial coin offerings, for anybody who doesn't know what that is. It's similar to an IPO, or initial public offering. But I think in tandem with an innovation platform, the government may develop an e-residency program, which would also attract foreign investment and bring that bring those eyes into Ukraine. It doesn't have to continue being what we're seeing now. So what's possible with blockchain technology? The 4 core elements are: number 1, digital identity; number 2, digital assets; 3, smart contracts; and 4, distributed apps. All of these things are possible when you look at, and artificial intelligence is probably the most important technology that can come out of adopting blockchain technology. A form of AI exists now, as we know it. We all use it. Everybody in the financial sector who does any trading or Forex, there's a form of that now, but what we're headed towards is something entirely different. And blockchain technology is the foundation to this technology. So, when it comes to the government, when you streamline services, you have a chance to perform real-time audits. You have a chance to, you can pay for your services real time, and again, the entire system is built on trust. You don't have to worry about your money being stolen or anything happening, because you need the technology allows you to have multiple signature wallets, which means that it's not possible for anybody to actually take your money. And it allows for real-time exchanges without paying FX fees. And I'm, walking down the street here, I mean, I know that, people hold currencies, or hold multiple currencies, because of, of the volatility of the currency. So moving forward, it's possible to, it's possible to repair the economy through this technology. So, to talk a little bit about what an ICO is, basically it's an initial coin offering. It's similar to initial public offering. Currently, right now, it's a $4 billion industry that's sprung up in the past year. It's unregulated, and there's good and bad ICOs. So with it being unregulated, you have obviously people that are going out in the world and saying, well, I've got this great new idea, taking money, and then they don't perform or produce anything at all. So regulation is the key to moving forward in this. So to give you guys an example of what a good ICO looks like, see if we can roll it. Can we roll the video?
Thank you, Ray.
30-second video.
Finished.
No, I'm not done. The video?
Thank you. Ну и завершит нашу короткую самопрезентацию.
And our short presentation will be made by Dmytro Bondarenko. You are the specialists on the new communications. You've got lots of projects, innovative projects, which are built in this sphere. How do you think whether Ukraine is a perfect ground for innovative projects? Which are the today's new tendencies? What we can do, what we can't do, and how can it influence and change the country soon? Thank you so much. I will agree with Andrew, because it's always easier to build than to rebuild, to reconstruct. The countries which have a very powerful infrastructure and repaired processes, it's much more difficult for them to change. So our kind of wilderness we're having here gives us advantage, so we shouldn't lose it. So to go on with what was spoken about by Andriy, by Evgeni, we need to look how we should change ourselves, because there are lots of forecasts, futurologist forecasts we've heard about already. The environment changes. So it seems to me that all of those forecasts are united by one thing: the speed is changing, the speed of the changes is going up, and so the complicatedness increases. It means that we need to change ourselves in a proper way. Andriy, I'm sorry, you're saying about the quick changes of the business environment and global processes too. So does the state catch up with those changes? I wouldn't give any assessment to the state. If we want to speak about the state itself, yesterday I flew here and I was getting prepared for today's meeting. I found at the website of our government the average plan of the priority actions of the government till 2020. It's not such a bad document where you could find the smart goals and you could comprehend it. But when we're speaking about the bigger scale, the scale of the state, we need to understand that we're interested not only in 3-year perspective, but 30-year perspective. All of us will be still alive in 30 years. Do we have the plan for 30 years? Do we have the strategy of the country? We have the huge amount of challenges we're trying to fight, so it seems to me that unfortunately all of our efforts are focused for today only. Well, maybe about tomorrow, but not more. We're not thinking about what environment we are going to live in 30 years, and we're not thinking how we should change in 30 years for us to be more efficient than we are today, for us to exist how we are now. And it's really an interesting question. We need aims, goals, we need the strategy, and we need simultaneously to know how to act on 2 levels, the tactical level and strategic level. So it seems to me it's a very important task today, and then we'll have very interesting things going on if we're speaking about that. We'll have different aims emerging, because someone will tell that Ukraine is an agrarian country, someone will tell that Ukraine is an IT country, someone will tell we are having a wonderful geopolitical location and we should to be the trade country or the service country. So we'll have different programs and dialogues. Different dialogues are different political processes. We will have the fight of the ideas, the real politics. It seems to me it's really important. And also I'd like to say a couple of words how I see what's important for us. We're thinking about the program, the agenda for today and what we should teach our children. But what should we teach and study ourselves? We need to study ourselves with this tempo we are having now. For me, for instance, first of all, and I have to think what I should study. So it seems to me it's very important not to focus on the hard skills, which are changing so quickly, but on the soft skills, the skills to adjust ourselves. It's really important this moment to consume new technologies, to study them quickly, and to refuse and then to get the new ones soon. Emotional intellect, the speed and complications, the crazy tempo. It's a great challenge for each of us. Self-improvement. I do agree that information is too much now, but the question is not only about the information, but how you can work with that. Robotization, automatization, all of that will come eventually. It replaces the human labor, it replaces the manual one, which is more mechanical, which is simpler. So it means that the requirements for the intellectual labor is increasing more and more, and it means that the work will be held only by the smartest. And if we have the global concentration of the capital and the corporates are earning more and more, there is the whole transfer of the money and polarization, but we're having bigger population. It's a very interesting picture later on. We need to comprehend it to understand it. It's a real perspective. The real studies of the technologies I've mentioned about that, the skills how to communicate, which is really important for today, the skills how to analyze, the question of the analytics, which would be of high quality, analytics in dynamics. It's a super important skill. And we shouldn't forget about the values and morale, which are the foundation of a human being. Because all of the problems we will face soon, we'll have to solve them according to our consciousness, the role of the human, and so on. Thank you, Dmitry. Thank you. Natalie, can I answer your question as for the speed, dynamics of the changes? Well, only about half of the minute, please, because we're short of time. Yes, very quickly, because I can say that my company, Deloitte Ukraine, doesn't change so quick as I need them to. If they don't change that quick as I don't, I think that the question about the state is rhetorical. Okay, thank you. Now I'm giving the microphone to the people who are in the audience, so to the participants. I'd like you to ask any questions, but I still would like to say that our conversation was very calm. It was very balanced. It seems to me it lacks a bit of dramatism, a bit of discussion, so I do hope that you, all of you here, will ask very complicated and inconvenient questions for our speakers, the questions which are close to Ukrainian reality. So please, again, we will work 35 minutes for your questions, and in the end of the panel discussion, I will give the time for all of our speakers in the end. So please, let's begin. It's always difficult to be the first one, but who is the boldest here? Please introduce yourself, and would you say whom are you asking? Or maybe to several speakers then. Hello, my name is Stas Yurasov from LIGA.net. I have the question to all of the speakers. How can you comment? We notice, sometimes I analyze the markets of telecommunications, which are rather leading markets. They can see some of the cuts of the staff. In Ukr they had 100,000 of employees, and now they have 27,000 only. In Kyivstar, the company, which didn't have such a great staff, during the last 2 years they cut the staff for about 1,500, it seems to me. So I've got a question to all of the participants. What shall we do with those people who don't have the employment anymore? And what's the responsibility of the corporations? Because they hired them and then just fired the people. Thank you. So what can we do with the people who are free, don't know what to do after that? Please, very short. Well, to be short, I'll say, well, of course, the level of employment, unfortunately, is very low. So automatization leads to that, but the creative economy increases. The economy where the social capital, the creative capital, where our musicians, our artists, our people who are designers, fashion designers, they are there. And we've got great opportunities for creative works. We're very creative people, so we can always do a lot. So I think Ukraine is in a very nice position because necessity is the mother of invention. In Spain, there is 25% of unemployment. And the second moment, I'll mention about that in the end too, but today the question about universal basic income, that is the basic income which is very relevant. This was firstly held in Switzerland and now in several cities is already done here, because the fairness, the justice, innovations in the sphere of social structure. What's going on in our country? Money is just being transferred from one pocket to another. What was created in the Soviet Union, if we speak about those $92 billion of GDP, the raw material. So we have to forget about that, and we need to think about the creative economy. And the people who were fired from the big corporations, they've got great opportunities. But it seems to me you didn't say what we should, or how we can make the non-creative people busy. Yes, I just wanted to say that there will be much more free people than just creative ones. We wouldn't find opportunities to employ them. One of the moments is when there is the overpopulation and there is the crisis of the value. Unfortunately, the war can solve this question. I wouldn't like it to happen how it happened in the middle of the last century. This is the radical option. I thought for a very long time, and yes, and in summer I had the 10 days of meditation, so I had inspiration during the 7th day of this course. Our planet is Earth, and we're speaking about ecology so much. The 7.5 billion of people who are living here, they left the trace on our beautiful planet so much that my opinion that those people who are becoming free, we have to employ them in the recovery, renewal of the harm which we did for our planet. The planet is huge and the harm is even bigger. So I have some ideas which mechanism should be used between the business and the state, and which added benefits because of automatization can be used. As for some taxations, they could be spent on those projects. But we are short of ecologists, but people who deal with flora and fauna. This is a very big trend, direction. It will be enough for hundreds of millions of people. Mr. Anders, how will Europe solve the question with the free labor force? Well, of course you will pay social payments, but still, how will European business make those people busy? Because this is the common problem for everyone, knowing robotization and...
Well, I don't think anyone really knows what is going to happen. I have seen several reports, one from Oxford University a few years ago, which said that, if I remember correctly, 47% of today's jobs in America would disappear within 20 years. The other day, one of the authors of that report came out in a new context from Nesta, which is another institution in the UK, saying, no, it won't be that much. But the main problem will be the transition, because so many people will become redundant, they will lose their jobs, and they won't have the skills necessary for new jobs that will be offered. So that is the first issue for the political system to address. What do we do in this transition? I like the idea, by the way, about planet stewardship, and that, because there is so much to repair. So that may be one of the issues. The problem I see is really that many of the jobs that will disappear, they are now in the private sector. Many of the new jobs that may be offered are in the public sector. It's about caring for children, caring for the elderly, culture, education, etc. And they have to be financed somehow. So literally it means raising the taxes. And it shouldn't be a problem if the money is spent well by the public sector. offering people new kinds of jobs, offering people to enhance their skills, etc. But I can see, in particular in the US, just to mention to increase taxes by 1% and you are dead as a politician. Also in Europe, it's a difficult issue. I don't think we have a recipe. I don't think we have a blueprint to how to do this. We are overtaken by this. And I don't see any political party in Europe that has a well-developed strategy on how to embrace the digital economy. We don't. We are naked into that. So that's one of the issues we have to deal with, and very, very urgently. And if Ukraine could take on this and address it in a holistic way, I think that would be wonderful. Because you have a lot of talent here that understands what's going on.
Thanks. Okay.
Дякую. Any other questions? Please be more active, my friends. Hello, my name is Irina Chernявskaya, Business Magazine. I have a very short question, and I'd like to get short responses from all of the speakers. The answers which would be realistic, please. In this life, in this time we are living now, what do you think? What are the drivers of the growth of Ukrainian economy in the closest perspective, and they can make our economy survive? Thank you. This is the question to all of the speakers, yes. So please, my friends, let's be very short. Please, Dmitry. It seems to me that it's very important to understand what's the environment. If our environment doesn't change, then undoubtedly we can see who survives now. This is an obvious example. If we understand that our environment, business environment, is static, constant and permanent as it is now, we can see who's developing. Who's developing not thanks to something, but on the contrary, in comparison with the conditions we are having. But if our environment changes, the legislation and the taxation system won't be a restrictive one, but a stimulating one, not with the new restrictions, but the new directions, then everything will change. I don't want to say trivial things like IT or agrarian sector, but this is what survives now. But depending on our politics, depending on our strategy, we can get any picture. The most important thing for us to have it. Because the situation, I will come back to the question of the 30-50 years ahead. Europe has the problem of unemployment, but this problem is getting multi-layered into immigrants, the people who are refugees and come into Europe for the sake of better life, and who don't add the working places. Nothing is being constructed for them. This is the problem. But if we understand that for the 30 years the population of Earth will be increased several times, and this is the young population, it won't have enough time to get old with such tempo. So the problems which are going to emerge is just elementary resources, even the water. How can we spend strategically the resources by the countries which problems they will face in 30 to 50 years? Let's take an example of Russia. Everybody is interested in that. Russia is also has lots of water thanks to Baikal. It's the carrier of water. It's surrounded by India, China, the countries where the population grows the quickest. And if this problem emerges, this fresh water problem, if it emerges, Russia will have to invest in the defense. Because it won't be the war how they act with our Crimea, that someone will take it, something will just come and take. It will be the problem when millions or maybe billions of people will go and take the resource without which they wouldn't survive. This is one of the examples of the strategic tasks. And knowing that, how the countries will spend their efforts and the working force, I do hope that in 30 years the history will be totally different, beginning with the Crimea and ending with Russia. Thank you, Dmitry. Thank you. And now the audience asked us about the main drivers for the business. I'd like to ask Pavlo, maybe he knows and maybe guesses what I mean about the main factors which slow the development of the Ukrainian business. We were speaking about that a bit. I would like to ask you about those breaking factors, which is, for instance, corruption. What do you think? Why is corruption such an inhibiting factor for all of the levels of Ukrainian authorities? Why doesn't it decrease? What are the reasons for that? How do you think? Thank you for such a question. Well, really, I'll give a response, but I will begin with something different. We have a unique opportunity now, a unique chance to have the totally different picture in 10 years, the picture of Ukrainian economy. We're having a very low positions now because of the loss of the part of economy and the war and the very weak institutional capacity of the state authorities. But still, we can afford ourselves different experiments. And to promote those directions and trends of economy which were not used to be classical, neither for Europe nor for the world. As for the unemployment questions, I'd like to comment upon this question. This problem is not only in the private but in the public sector, but it's not a problem, it's an opportunity for the people who need to study and to change themselves. For 3 years, only about the Ministry of Justice, we decided to cut the staff twice. 13,000 people out of 27,000 were fired. What will happen in 20 years? The classical profession of the lawyer will disappear. We won't see it anymore, how we have it in the classical economy. What new professions will emerge? Those will be the sectors of economy which are connected with the services and digital economy. As for the corruption, unfortunately, the situation is as follows. For the 25 years, Ukraine and several more countries of the European Union, Bulgaria and Romania, are the countries where is the lowest tolerance of the citizens towards corruption. The citizens, they perceive corruption as part of their life. Unfortunately, it was in the mentality of the people during dozens of years. And the corruption is one of the most frightening, the thing which has become almost daily, when it's much more profitable to the person to solve his or her problem if he or she violates the law through some gratitude to state officials. This corruption is problematic, like the same problematic as macro corruption or top corruption. We have to change ourselves. Whether this is corruption in the clinic or at school or in the kindergarten or in the ministry, this is the same corruption which ruins the perspective. Another problem is, which inhibits the Ukrainian economy, is monopolization of lots of sectors. After the privatization, the end of the 90s, the main sectors of economy, the classical ones, were focused in the hands of several dozens of people. So what's the advantage of that? The classical economy changes. So the raw material economy, the metallurgy, the energy is becoming a bit different because we are having some new opportunities for the development of new trends of economy. So I think Ukraine has a wonderful chance to experiment in this direction and to give an opportunity for the business which is ready to change either, which is not working according to the old standards, when the components and parts to define the problem is sometimes the optimization of the taxation and just giving away the money just not to hide them from the budget. And we have all the conditions to create such conditions. Not a single Ukrainian businessman wants to begin the discussion with the minister because he says that the citizens are giving bribes in the clinics. Well, I would say a couple of words, but just to go on, not to create a conflict. First of all, the businessman doesn't differ from a person who gives the bribe in the clinic. I can't say that I lived during the period where the businessman didn't exist. But my parents, the people who lived during this period, they were totally equal. And the system which was constructed, it made people totally equal at all. This is as for the corruption matter. And this is the question how these or those people develop and how they earn money. And this is the question of corruption. From the side of the business, I would advise you to look at it at a different angle. What's important for the business to be developed? It's important to have the equal opportunities. Because the business, but the Ukrainian business has equal opportunities for today, unfortunately. If we have the fact for today, no. Because one of the companies, you pay all of the taxes, you're working totally in the white economy, but there is the company who works in the black economy. So the corruption is not the question number one. Of course, it's important, but not the main one. So if you have access to the budget, if you don't, those are different things. Yes, please. Well, using an opportunity that we're having the representative of the authorities here, I'd like to say that according to the figures, 92 billion of GDP, national product now, 280,000 is per capita. So if we speak about the drivers of development, they're not in this economy, about 3% of non-raw material economy. Everybody is speaking about IT, but IT is totally raw material economy, because those $3 billion IT gives is totally outsourcing. So the driver of the development is in the creation of the intellectual infrastructure. First of all, in Kyiv city, give part of the territory, 50 hectares, for instance, for us to have Gogol Fest there, the festival there, different festivals, theater festivals, for us to have startups there, like Unit City has. Unit City is a totally private initiative, which was created for the private investments. So give an example of the private-state partnership, because the beneficiary of the following growth won't be the state. We will be the beneficiaries, the people who are leaving our country, millions of people leaving our country from Ukraine with the brains, with millions of dollars which were invested by the state. This is the sum which is necessary for us to have a cool specialist. And all those hundreds of millions of dollars are leaving the country. That is why the driver of the growth is very simple. This is the creation. What was mentioned by the Prime Minister today, and everybody is speaking in technoparks and industrial parks and so on. For 26 years we're speaking about that. Let's do that finally. I totally agree with you. Severodny Cross of Economic Truth, the edition. Andriy Bulakh said a very nice words that even Deloitte company is lagging behind from the modern technologies, and business is lagging behind. The state of Ukraine is lagging behind, as you've mentioned. This is the rhetorical question, right? So I am writing lots of articles and highlighting the activities of the state in the technological sector. So I have an impression that the state officials and the people, this core of people who are responsible for the development of Ukraine, they are mentally in the beginning of the 2000s. Years. Those people who should be visionaries, who should construct the strategy of the country and build the country, they are behind the social, behind the people. What should we do with that? How can we change those people? How can we change their mentality? Maybe we should replace those people. This is the question for the minister, Mr. Pavlo Petrenko. Thank you. It's very comfortable, convenient to criticize the state and state institutions, because this is the tradition. We have lots of betrayals around us. I'll give you several examples how leading we are in comparison with other countries. We have the first in the world state auction, which is created on the blockchain system, and it was done in Ukraine, open market, which implements everything, all the confiscated property. Ukraine was the first one to be in the global register of beneficiaries. We are the first country in the world which gave its data, and now we are forming and giving the mood for all of the rest countries who are trying to join this global register. The state land cadastre. Several years ago, it's now at blockchain technology too. Open registers, which we opened and gave access to this information. Online services we are giving now. And Ukraine is in the 20 countries of the world as for the easiness of the opening and registering of the business, according to the ranking of doing business. As for the e-governance, now the 10 ministries which are having reforms, functional reforms, are totally into e-governance. This is the Ministry of Justice among them. And if I came to the office of Ministry of Justice and signed from 500 to 700 documents a day, those are several tables. Now, the main documents are in the electronic format, so you can do it from iPad. The system of Prozorro, which is acknowledged by lots of institutions in the world as one of the best as for the state procurement, as for the economy of the expenses and the anti-corruption. If we take ourselves as a failed state, nothing will work. Whether the people who are working as state officials, state authorities are lagging behind, yes, the situation in the world is changing. I'm in the system of the authorities since the end of 2012. Before that, I've been the private lawyer. Is there a person who could make the quicker, more radical way? Of course, because it's a normal competitive market, but you need to come and do, not only criticize. Thank you, Pavlo. Anders has several words to say about that, right?
I listened carefully to what the minister said, and I think what some of the initiatives seems to be very well placed. But I think we face two problems here, at least based on my experience from the European Union and from Sweden, and that is there is a generational issue. People who are in their 20s and maybe early 30s, they are very much hands-on. They understand what's going on. But my generation, and let's say those who are 40 plus, they have, let's face it, difficulties to really understand the pace and what's going on. So that's one of the problems. And so when we talk about education, I think we need to think about educating us as much as the young people. But secondly, the educational system as such is very vertical. We have a lot of specialists in society, but we have very few people who understand how things are interlinked. And it's the interlinkages, it's the interconnectednesses that are the difficult issues to address. That's where we find the problems. And we have too few people who really are good at doing that. And I can see it in the Swedish government all the time, that different ministries, they don't fight each other, but they defend their turf. And some of the issues we are discussing here now, you need much more integrated decision making. Look at the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals, they are 17. If you pursue them one after one, you're not going to make it. You have to have an integrated approach. And there we lack capacity. So we have to work on that.
Спасибо. Еще вопросы? Прошу.
Any more questions? I'm sorry, can I comment upon that? Yes, sure. It seems to me that's a very deep question now mentioned, and it doesn't have a simple solution. But we're speaking a lot about experiments, so it seems to me that the minister mentioned and lots of people mentioned about the necessity of experiments and new attempts. The question is for each of us, of each of the presentees. We can speak about the experiments on the level of the state, the level of the company. Are you ready to experiment on your own, to hold these experiments with you and to create something new? As for myself, I can say that I've mentioned about the 10 days course of meditation. I'm speaking with lots of my people about meditation and they're answering, no, it's something different, we don't need it. But have you tried it? No. But we know the responses, we know the answers for those questions. We have never tried it, but we know what to respond. So the average statistic shows that now the state has new and bright people who are trying to create lots of changes, and we've got nice examples. But average indicator is for the people like any other company. For instance, the bakery or Deloitte company, just the average indicator is what Ukraine is and the Ukrainians are. So I'm thinking that we shouldn't speak about the state only. If you want to change something, change yourself. Try to experiment. Try to do something new tomorrow, which you never did during the last 10 years. Be surprised, make a mistake, take a conclusion, and then experiment more. Thank you. Dear friends, we're having 7 minutes left to ask one more question now, and then I'll give several minutes for each speaker to wrap up, 30 seconds for each. So let's speed up. 3 questions from the audience, but very quick and to one person. Out of 20 million of the economically active population, 7 million are working for some different countries because they're earning money beyond the borders. So the short question is, what should we do to make those people employed in this country, for them to create value added, for them to increase the gross national product, because it's so small? Whom are you asking? This is the question for everyone. Who wants to answer, but only one, please? I think nobody has the correct answer, because it's a very nice and complicated answer. I would look at the creative economy, which was mentioned by Evgeni, and as for the question of the corruption, which we've mentioned too. For me, corruption on the level of the human who pays the bribe at the clinic and the person who pays the bribe to get access for the state resources is a bit different. So the situation of monopolistic state and the lack of competition doesn't give us an opportunity to develop. The creative economy and an attempt to find those requirements and needs which should be fulfilled, not just to take the resource we're having and to try to maximize it. Creative economy, seems to me, its development will give an opportunity to take those people back from abroad. It seems to me the answer is obvious, because we've got all the opportunities to create internal market, because there is the war now, we are at war now, and it creates opportunities. We have a wonderful example of Israel, agriculture, and what's going on here is the next opportunity here, and the technologies. We've got opportunities of the creation of internal market. But now either the state is not ready or it's not relevant, but the state doesn't deal with that. So we should create internal market. This is the first thing, and the second, the access to the capital. Of course, it's understandable how we can develop the business, knowing this situation with the credits and loans and the total lack of the capital. But we've got dozens of billions of the pillar, of the cushion. Why don't we create the infrastructure for those billions to work for the investor? It's been created, and my colleague who mentioned about ICOs, we have all the opportunities now. They will emerge. We don't depend on the state. I will agree with Andriy. Let's do it on our own. The drone is everything for us. One more question, please. Of informational technologies for the management. So we're interested with one of the main drivers in the development of the economy. Each presentee named it, but with different names. Evgeni Utkin said that the criticism of the authority was horizontal, so we have to give the freedom of self-organization. The minister, Mr. Pavlo Petrenko, said that the second factor is the fight with the monopoly. We're speaking about creative technologies, we're speaking about informational technologies as a business. But all of that, as we are saying, is to give freedom to the small and medium business, because the informational business is the small and medium one. So the question is as following: why don't we do how it was done in Poland, in Germany, for the economy to be increasing? They created the program of the development of small and medium business, and after implementation of this program, those countries achieved a lot. Why haven't we done it? Some special programs of development, and it will increase our economy, because all the rest adoptions of legislation, you were right, the law is not self-aimed. It should change something for the people, so we should follow the end aim, the end goal. We understand the question. Very short. Well, of course, for the small and medium enterprise to get the new push, it's not enough to adopt laws, though the laws are important, those regulations and demonopolization. Mr. Petrenko, please list what we've done for the development of small and medium business, just point by point, what's already done and what we need to do. We have the ban for the checks of the small and medium businesses and all of the businesses. This moratorium is for 3.5 years. Secondly, the demonopolization and privatization, because lots of shadow capital is in the public sector and public enterprises. So as for the experiments, by the way, the law draft by the government as for the mass privatization of the enterprises foresees that the controversies between the investor and the states can be according to the English law. It doesn't mean the automatic transfer of our courts into the UK, but in this category, as for the privatization, if the investor comes for him or her to be convinced that his property rights will be preserved, we have some. So sometimes we will look to the UK, we won't invent the wheel. This is the experiment as for privatization, to attract the real investor from abroad. And the third one, the access to the capital, it's the most complicated question. The small and medium business, without the access to the capital, it's very complicated for them to develop at all. So very important is the signal to the external markets for our banking sector to get money, and cheaper money. This cheap money can come from two sources, either from the citizens and businesses who will allocate those money to the deposits, or the external markets. The third block of the questions is possible when we renew the trust to the financial sector. We have first positive signals. You know that the government had the 15-year bonds for $3.5 billion, and the demand of the external investors was 3 times more than we allocated. But we are having certain risks, the war and some other risks. Still, the trust comes back when we're getting cheap resources. These resources will come to the real economy, to the small and medium business. Okay, so we have to wrap it up soon. So please, the last question from the audience, and after that our speakers will sum up. Hello. My name is Petrenko, the club caller. I have the question, because we have the situation that the panel discussions contradict each other. We just used to listen that while the country is still trying to solve the short-term questions, we shouldn't think about the long-term questions, and now we have the disbalance. So now I would focus upon Ukraine. Today, during the forum, we have the discussion about the business, the state and the society, but I'd like to pay your attention as the representatives of our Ukrainian society. It's my subjective opinion. If the state official thinks from the point of view of the society, because he is the member of society, maybe he'll transform his own opinion, and the businessman will be more transparent, because he'll understand if he didn't pay enough taxes, he stole from himself as the member of the society. And as an example, I will name the data. As for the first places of the happiness index in the rankings, the data has a very simple logics. People say, we are not paying taxes, we invest into the society. So I've got a question. How can we do for us not to have division into the state officials and business, but for all of us to think about our future from the point of view of the society? Because Maidan showed that at a certain moment all of the people can feel themselves united and to stand for their position. This is the question. How can we do, what can we do for us to think from the point of view of the social problems? Because not always the business is coming for the implementation of the problems which has social impact. Thank you. You know, it seems to me that this is the last question which was very important and very symptomatic, because, you know, gentlemen, the topic of our discussion, Ukraine in the new world and route to success, we don't need the new world where the person won't feel happy. It seems to me that it's really, the girl is right, the main question, how we can build the country where the person will feel him or herself happy. So please, 1 minute each speaker, please, just summing up what we've heard today and answers the question of this beautiful girl. So please, let's begin with you, Dmytro, because we began from that side, so let's do it backwards. It seems to me that it's very important for us, in the society, to initiate the dialogue, because society is the consciousness of the people. It's really important for us to initiate this dialogue. It's the role of media is very important, of its quality, of its cleanness. It's important to give the proper messages. It's very important to see the role of the state here, because the state itself has to provide, to become the guarantee of the quality of informational field. What's going on now with the manipulations, with the propaganda, with populism, I think that it's just a much bigger problem than about the priorities than corruptions. It breaks the generations ahead and it beats the strategic things. But speaking about happiness, it seems to me that happiness is much more individual notion. Why there was the question about people emigrating, leaving the country, the quality of life? This is what's important. The quality of life. People are trying to pursue the better life. You've mentioned that the business, the girl mentioned about the state official. But what's the state official? Those are the people who having the better quality. But because of their value and moral points, and because of the whole system, the whole model is distorted of the relationship, business state and the society. It's distorted a bit. So if we come back to the meditation Andriy mentioned, when you try to balance the energy you are having, which exists in you simultaneously, in the harmonization, this is what we lack. That's what we need. Mr. Anders, please.
Easy to sum up in 1 minute. First of all, I think business as usual is no option. We need to rethink a lot, in both with regard to how we organize politics and how we organize the economy. The gentleman from the Emirates this morning said, as an advice, turn the government into a business. I think it was a ridiculous proposition. We need balance between the market and the political system. Because if the market would solve all the problems, we wouldn't have such problems as we have, because markets have dominated for the last 30, 40 years. So if we want to have a more equal society, we need policy interventions. If we want to save us from climate change, we need policy intervention. And because of the rapid technology change, we need to build a lot of flexibility into the system, because we don't know what happens 5 years from now. Some of the decisions we may take today may be look very silly. So then we have to be flexible and rethink. And I think education is a must, because people will need new skills to be able to fare well in this new society and in this technology-changing society. And we need innovation all the time, but not innovation only to make business, but also to address some of the social and ecological problems we face. And I see too much of innovation today only looking for rapid exits and to earn a lot of revenue. I think we need to look at it more holistically and see that, yes, technologies are good, but they need also to address these common problems that we have.
Thank you. Pavlo.
Thank you. So, Pavlo, can the state become the partner of ours in this pursuit of happiness? Well, I think that we need to re-evaluate our attitude towards the state. That's what we're doing now. During the first revolution, I communicated with one of the Polish representatives. He lived in Kyiv for a long time, and he said, "You Ukrainians are unique. In the critical situation, you can gather together, concentrate, and do something impossible to defend your freedom, your rights. But in the usual daily situation, you don't care about your country at all, as if it was some stranger's country. When you leave your house, I'm going along the bridge, and I can see how people throw away the cigarettes from the cars. Well, I think it seems to me that there are not so many people. Do you do that, any of the presentees here? We need to get to know how to relate our country as a house, as our home for 30, 40, 50 years. Not in the critical moments, but every day. This is where I agree with you. We are all members of the society and living in this country. It's not important what functions you perform, whether you're a representative of the government or the business or the civil society. Please treat your actions and the country you live in as your own home. And then it will work. Thank you. Thank you. Ray, the technologies are ahead of the opportunities of the human being. Will we be able to cope with them? Will we be able to find our common future? And will business help us and Ukraine?
Well, I think, the most important thing that everybody needs to expect, moving forward is, we're entering an age of artificial intelligence, but we're also entering an age where technology is going to merge with human beings. We already carry around devices on us, but we're very, very quickly approaching what's called the singularity, and the singularity is when technology actually merges with biology. People are out there, like Elon Musk, who have, shifted their attention away from, previous projects like PayPal, and now they're focusing on changing the world through technology. And I'm a huge believer in, technology being the answer to many world problems. And we have that opportunity here in Ukraine now, and I'm, hoping that the government makes the right decision and moves forward, embracing that technology and not rejecting it. And thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. Well, answering the questions which was asked, I would say the following. I am sure that every person has his or her own evolution of consciousness, his personal consciousness, since the birth till the end of the life. And the same what happens with the consciousness of any business, because it has the certain concept to offer, shareholder or top management, this mission and vision. This is the evolution. Even some revolutions which had place in our country, they can't make the situation for the person to leap through several stages in his or her consciousness. We satisfy our basic physiological needs, then our needs in socialization, and later on we have the topic who's the main, who's the most important, you or me, and the moment I could take it, it's mine now, and then I try to keep it. Maybe fair, maybe not fair, but I try to keep it, and then I have the wish to become better and maybe the best among other companies in Ukraine or in the world. So some leadership qualities, and after that there is the wish to make the world better. Of course, it can't be that after the satisfaction of some of the basic needs you're going and trying to make the world better. This is evolution. This is how the consciousness develops. Some of the people in their consciousness, out of their own importance, they have the priority of improving the world, and some of the people just satisfying their basic needs. They're trying to keep what was given and doesn't want to give it away. This is evolution. This is the main thing. We have to be patient and to fulfill the experiments, to go on, to move on, and to evolutionize our consciousness. The same concerns the business. We're having more and more socially responsible businesses, the businesses who don't deal only about the maximization of the profits and benefits and the shareholders. There is sometimes the higher purpose which emerges. If we look at some different countries, the evolution of capitalism is going on there too. Those changes are having place there too. We are moving over there too. We'd like to speed up, but the world has such a construction that we need to evolutionize. Just to leap forward through several stages is impossible. Let's be patient, please. 1 minute only. 1 minute of human life. What is this building without the people who are here? This is the monument, maybe, and for you it's something different. What is our planet without the people who inhabit this planet? This is the piece of the rock, which is just going through our universe and isn't worth nothing. And we try to measure everything with the money, and the world is very needed, the new values are needed in the world, and the main value, the most important value as I consider, and as any person, as it seems to me, would consider. I just recently got a message. My friend died, who was the head of Intel company, Politolini. He was only 67 years old. So human life is the most important value, and the minute of the human life is that measure. Is the following value, the value with the help of which we will measure everything, including business. Thank you so much, Eugene. So, my friends, I thank all of you, all of our speakers, for the participants of this discussion, and my short conclusion is the following. Of course, the future is inevitable, but I'm a big fan of the role of the personality in the history, so I'm totally convinced that this future, new future, will depend on each of us, each of the present years. Thank you so much.